Hello to all of our attendees. Thank you for joining today's Family Office Network's webinar series featuring Synergy Disc. Presenting for us today is Josh Butters, CEO, and Dr. Neil Dougal, the founder. At the end of today's presentation, we will have time for Q&A. We encourage your questions, so please use your questions chat option on your screen to submit those questions over so we can answer them accordingly. And with that said, gentlemen, I'm going to let you take it from here.
Great. Thanks so much, Lindsay. And thanks, everybody, sincerely for jumping on today. We look forward to sharing you about our exciting little company and potential opportunity here. I know there's it's turbulent times there in North America. And thank you for taking your time out of the day to hear our story. And we look forward to potentially partnering with you to help bring this further commercialize our technology. I'm Josh Butters. I'm CEO of Synergy Disc Replacement, Inc. Synergy is a Canadian spinal medical device company with a wholly owned U.S. subsidiary that houses most of our operations and employees. So we're an exciting spinal medical device company. We have a differentiated product that's unique in the marketplace, and it's been designed and addresses unmet clinical needs and can actually expand the market. It's an exciting market opportunity. The worldwide global cervical implant market is over $3 billion today. And the cervical artificial disc segment of that market is actually the fastest growing segment in orthopedics with an 18% CAGR predicted over the next 5 to 10 years. Our device, called the Synergy Disc, which is a cervical artificial disc, is the only device that can restore both motion and alignment to the spine and can expand the disc market and the addressable patient population by over 50%. We have CE mark on the technology and have done early commercialization and have early revenues in Europe and Australia for the technology. We've got a solid balance sheet with over $4.5 million in cash. We've got a rapid sales growth plan coming up over the next 2 to 5 years, and we'll achieve operating profitability within 24 months. In terms of the company's history, we've raised over $18 million in prior rounds. And now we are on the precipice of beginning our IDE clinical trial. We're raising $15 million today in equity to complete this effort over the next 3 to 4 years. And we've already raised and have commitments of about 30% of this from our prior shareholders. Now, in terms of the company at a glance, we have, as I mentioned, a differentiated technology. We have a strong patent portfolio, global patent portfolio with over 55 issued patents for the technology. Our flagship marquee product is called the Synergy Cervical Artificial Disc. We've done now time to date over 1,000 cases over the last 10 years from our first pilot study. So 10 years of clinical history, 1,000 implantations of our technology, and we've had 0 device-related adverse events. As I mentioned, we have a CE mark on the technology that allows us to commercialize the technology in Europe. And so we have early revenues in the last few years in UK, Germany, Australia, and a handful of cases in Canada via the Special Access Pathway program. Today, we're expanding into key European and Asian markets to grow our sales. We have one of the top shareholders in the company is actually one of the top 3 global spine companies with over $1 billion in revenue. And they're helping us achieve our milestones that we'll talk to you about today. We have recently received FDA IDE approval, which allows us to begin this United States clinical trial, and we'll be enrolling our first patient in that trial this month. Here's a high-level overview of what we'll go through today. Our team we're a small spinal medical device company, but we have just a tremendous team with an extensive experience base in orthopedics. I've spent more than 20 years in orthopedic product development, technology development, commercialization. I've sold dozens of implant and instrumentation system technologies in orthopedics, ranging from spinal devices to orthopedic devices, orthopedic reconstruction, total knees, total hips, trauma, extremities, sports medicine, electrofrequency devices, digital health. You name it, I have kind of played it in one area or another. And I love this type of startup company type environment. Tom Hodgson is on the call and comes to us with tremendous experience. He was previously CEO of Lithium Americas, a TSX and NYSE listed company, as well as Magna Entertainment. and he brings extensive international capital markets experience, M&A experience with over 30 years in senior management positions. He's helping us from a strategic and financial advisement standpoint and helping us with our capital raise needs. Matt Woods heads up our sales group based in London, UK. He used to run sales for Zimmer and has a tremendous experience base and network base of independent spinal and orthopedic distributors in Europe and Asia. And also attending on the call today is Dr. Neil Dougal. He's our founder, chief medical officer, and director for the company. Dr. Dougal is a professor of neurosurgery and has been in practice for over 20 years. His practice is dedicated to treating degenerative disc disease of the cervical spine, and he has approximately 100 peer-reviewed papers and book chapters and is considered an international expert in the space of disc replacement surgery and degenerative disc disease. With that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Dougal to give you a little background on the clinical problem.
Well, thank you, Josh, and thank you everyone who's attended this call. Everyone has encountered arthritis of the spine, whether it be in the lower back or in the neck. In the neck, when one has a herniated disc, this can cause neck pain, arm pain, and in some cases, spinal cord compression. With aging and changes in posture as we hunch over our cell phones and laptops, we're seeing an increasing number of patients with degenerative disc disease that require surgery. And I happened to have an opportunity early in 2002 to be the first surgeon in North America to perform an artificial disc. This was a great opportunity for my career. At that time, I was working with the company that had acquired a small startup out of Seattle, and I was running around the world teaching other surgeons about artificial discs and meeting and having quite a bit of experience in the space. This, however, was the pivotal moment where I realized that the current technology had room for improvement. I had this patient, this is a lateral x-ray. You can see the teeth, the back of the head, and you can see that the neck has this gentle curve called lordosis, and it's the same gentle curve we have in our lower back. And I had this patient who had a disc herniation. She underwent surgery. The intraoperative x-rays looked good, and then unfortunately she presented 6 weeks after surgery with this picture. And you can see here that the end plates of the device are what we call kissing. They should be parallel. This patient had severe neck pain. We had in reality just changed her alignment. Imagine standing up and now putting your head forward for a few minutes. You'll engage muscles in your neck that you never knew you had. So I took these x-rays to the company that had acquired this first disc, and I said there was a problem. There was a problem with alignment, because everything we do as spine surgeons is about providing or correcting alignment after we decompress the nerves. They told me it was something wrong with my technique, and I left it at that. Incidentally, I had been asked to give a talk at the Australian Spine Society meeting. I got up and showed these x-rays, and out of the woodwork came other surgeons showing me examples of similar problems with other devices, where initially everything looked good, and then after several weeks, they developed this problem of alignment. So really, I didn't start with the idea of starting a company. I was trying to solve a clinical problem. But the problem is that of posture and alignment. So it's surprising to know that only 40% of us actually have a normal, what we call normal alignment. With age, with habit, sometimes in other conditions, we lose that abnormal, that normal alignment, and we have what's called a bad posture or kyphosis, and that's very common in the population. So currently, if one has a abnormal alignment, the only option for that patient group is to have a fusion, because a fusion is the only strategy we can use to recreate somebody's alignment. If somebody has a normal alignment, they have the option. They can have a fusion or disc replacement. So I started to notice with my patients that really only 2 in 5 patients could have the opportunity of having an artificial disc. So that was really the clinical problem, the unmet clinical need. And with Josh and his brilliant engineers, they took this idea of providing alignment and created an artificial disc that did exactly that. They also corrected all the features I noticed in other implants. Spinal surgery or orthopedic surgery is a very iterative process. We have an implant, and then by trial and error, we learn nuances, surgical nuances, as well as nuances with the implant. And one thing that the things that we needed to solve were really that of alignment, something that was specifically designed for multi-level cases. In the United States, the average number of levels treated in the neck is 1.8. We wanted safety stops, and we wanted to prevent some of the complications we were seeing with many of the other devices that had a ball and socket geometry. I'm sorry, there's a bit of a lag as we go through these slides. So we have 2 offerings. There's a 0 and 6 degree implant. Surgeons have gravitated towards the 6 degree implant. As Josh mentioned earlier, we've done over 1,000 cases with no device-related adverse events. The first pilot study was done almost 10 years ago. Since that time, we have 4 peer-reviewed journal papers. On the commercial side, we have CE mark, and we have an FDA approval to start our study. Here's an x-ray of our very first patient. You can see how the alignment of those end plates creates what we call kind of a wedge, which is normal. That's what, you know, a natural healthy disc has about 6 degrees built into it. And this is the same patient 2 years later, moving their head forward and backwards. And the reason, you know, why is having an artificial disc important? Well, if you have a fusion, you don't have movement where we do the surgery, and all the stresses get transferred either above or below. And we find that at 10 years, 25% of people have something either above or below. The rationale for having an artificial disc is it corrects that problem. Now, here, really to really present an ideal picture or testament of our technology is this x-ray. And there's a schematic beside it. So I'll try to explain this. This is a patient whose alignment is abnormal. Their neck is somewhat forward like this. And if we have in spine surgery different angles that we calculate, and the next prompt here will show us those specific angles as showing what we call kyphosis. And when we do surgery, the first thing, if we did a fusion, is we'd recreate that normal alignment by putting a wedge of bone in or a metal wedge. But with an artificial disc, that had never been performed before. So the next slide shows exactly that. It shows really 2 x-rays, one superimposed on the other. So we've taken somebody's neck like this and we've realigned it. This isn't the patient moving their head, but simply the impact of the device on the alignment of the neck. The next slide is the actual patient going through flexion and extension 2 years post-surgery. So really, the goal, when I used to have patients come in and say, I want an artificial disc, Dr. Dougal, and I said, well, I'm sorry, you can't because of your alignment. And really, that's what Synergy has solved. It's taken those 3 or 6 out of 10 patients that have a bad alignment and now have given them the option of having an artificial disc.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dougal. That was very helpful. Let's talk a little bit about the market opportunity for cervical implants. Worldwide, the market opportunity for cervical implants is over a $3 billion market. It's growing modestly with the advent of new technology as well as the aging baby boomer generation at about a 3% rate. However, the cervical artificial disc segment of that market is the single fastest growing segment with over 18% CAGR predicted over the next 5 to 10 years, not only in spinal discs, but also in the orthopedic market in general. Now, most of this market actually is in the United States, over 60%. So naturally, that's where the company's focus is today. If you look at the market share players, really 80% of the global spine revenue of $9.6 billion in spinal market overall is really carried by the top 11 competitors. Medtronic, Johnson & Johnson, Stryker, invasive, Globus Medical are the top 5 players in this market and command a lot of the market share. However, over 50% of the list of these companies do not have an artificial disc technology today. Now, we're not the first technology to come out in the space, but that's actually a great thing. The first technology is really focused on restoring, the first generation of technology is really focused on restoring motion. But as Dr. Dougal elaborated, they've done nothing really to address alignment. This has been kind of an unmet need or an unmet design requirement for this area. So the Synergy Disc today is the only device that can both restore motion to that segment, but also correct alignment, and is designed to be stable for multi-level procedures. The 6 devices on the right of this screen, you can see with check marks on in the center of your screen, US 1 level approval. These are the active devices on the market today. So there are a handful of devices, and some of these devices are going after what's called 2-level indications as well, that allows you to use the implant in a single surgery at 2 adjacent disc segment levels. The Synergy Disc, we are pursuing our 1-level clinical trial and approval today, and we plan to go down a 2-level pathway in the near future as we demonstrate success in our 1-level indication study. Again, more than 50% of these top 11 spine companies today still need an artificial disc offering. Now, this has happened before. You know, obviously, being first to market is great, but being first to market, you find out where the problems are, where the deficiencies are. If you look at the natural evolution of technology in orthopedics, take the knee, for example. When people had arthritis of the knee, couldn't walk, in the early days, they actually fused those, and they used intramedullary nails to fuse the knee. Then total joints came out with first generation implants restoring motion. And now with technologies decades later, they continue to iterate and improve on that technology. And they have minimally invasive, highly durable, long-time life-standing implants. The spine is the exact same scenario. The historical solution today has been fusion. I would say it's still considered the gold standard for most patients. In the last 20 years, however, cervical arthroplasty or cervical artificial disc replacement has come out to restore motion to that segment. But again, as Dr. Dougal elaborated, this has not been the perfect solution. The Synergy Disc is a next generation device. It can restore motion, it can correct alignment, stability, it can expand patient population, and it's ideal for most of these patients. Now, by having this differentiation, the Synergy Disc, with our recent commercialization outside the US and Europe and Australia, has seen great adoption and great penetration in these markets. We've grown our sales steadily year over year since initially, since our commercialization efforts. In 2019 over 2018, we doubled our revenues. In 2020, we were predicting at least a 50% growth. Now, COVID has certainly had an impact on the company, as with all spinal medical device companies. The temporary halt of non-emergency surgical procedures has temporarily delayed these cases. So we've certainly seen an impact, but we've continued to grow our distributor base. We've continued to expand in other territories. And as those cases come back, as COVID wanes and the hospitals regain to full spinal procedure capacity, those cases will come back. We've got, as you can see on the right side, a very healthy sales growth curve and plan going forward. The blue bars starting in 2025 are where we'll get access to the largest market in the world, the USA market. And easily within a few years of US market entry, we can become a $75 million plus spinal medical device company that's highly disruptive and highly profitable. So today, in terms of distribution, we are in 3 main markets around the world. These have been our test cases, and we've seen great physician adoption of the technology: Australia, Germany, and the UK. You can see Australia is our market leader. We've got a great partner and distributor distributing the Synergy Disc in that territory. In 2020, we've taken advantage of the COVID time to sign on a host of other distributors and expand, obtain additional registrations in European territories in Spain, Greece, Cyprus, Switzerland, UAE, and we have begun our Mexico registration process. and should have that early in 2021. So we've got a very strategic, we're not going to be in every market around the world. Not every market is great for cervical arthroplasty, but there are defined markets in this space that have good pricing, good adoption, and good reimbursement for these types of procedures. And we'll go after those in a strategic fashion. Here's our operating business plan going forward. So in 2020 today, we're at less than $1 million in revenue, and we are still cash flow negative today. Within 24 months, we will be EBITDA positive from operations with our sales growth. And you can see a very modest sales penetration curve over the coming years. By 2027, we should be north of $70 million in total sales, with the US commanding most of this market share, with a very healthy margin of almost 90% and dropping almost $25 million in EBITDA to the bottom line. Now, to get to the US market, this requires us to engage in this IDE clinical trial that I referred to. So we are raising $15 million today to complete our one-level trial. The one-level trial is a single-arm study, so it's non-randomized. It'll be done on 175 patients in the United States. We've been approved by the FDA to do this at about 15 sites across the United States. We have just activated our first 2 sites in the study, very prominent spinal orthopedic centers. And we plan to enroll our first patient actually this month. One of the unique things about the study design, we are using historical fusion data as our control arm for the study. So our strategic shareholder is providing that data for us, and now we're able to only do 175 patients and compare the Synergy Disc patients against this control arm study. So in 2020, we'll begin the study. We plan to complete our enrollment over the next 12 months. And then we follow up the patients over the next 2 years and submit our PMA application in 2023 and anticipate having our PMA US approval in 2024 and begin US market commercialization at that time. You can see the use of funds. The $15 million will go entirely to milestones on completing the study, completing the patient follow-up, completing our clinical research and monitoring activities, and is very front-end loaded. Now, of this round, we already have investors and prior shareholders that have already committed to 30% of this round. Now, as I mentioned, over 50% of the top 10 players, top 11 players in the spine orthopedic market do not have artificial discs. Why is that? Now, they all believe that this is a very attractive market segment. However, as you can see, it takes a lot of money. It takes a lot of time. You have to go through this clinical trial process to develop these technologies. So the major orthopedic and spinal device companies, they don't like to invest in technologies like this. What they'll do is they'll actually tend to acquire technologies that de-risk these technologies for them. So you can see here on the screen a list of prior comparables and prior exits that have happened in this space, ranging from about $100 million all the way to $1 billion. One of the most recent exits was the exit of LDR and the Mobi-C technology by Zimmer. This exit value was about $1 billion, and one of the unique things about this exit was not only did the Mobi-C have their one-level indication, but they also went after what I've referred to as two-level indications. They got one-level and two-level approvals. They coupled that with complementary disruptive fusion technologies, and that garnered them a $1 billion exit value. So accordingly, Synergy will plan to maximize our market penetration and shareholder value. We'll execute our one-level study, and then on the heels of that, we plan to pursue our two-level study as well. Another thing to notice about this list of prior exits and comps is the status of where they're acquired. So a lot of the technologies are acquired as they near their FDA approval or just after their FDA approval timeline. Accordingly, in Synergy, we see a strong likelihood that the company will receive a potential strategic offer or takeout option. The average value of these ranges has been in the $360 million range. Now, we're not positioning the company entirely for a takeout. As you can see from our business plan, we plan to have a highly profitable, disruptive operating company. Our pre-money valuation for this round is at $37 million. We've been very fair in terms of keeping our valuation low to provide a good investor return and potential multiple for our investors. So to wrap it up, what makes Synergy different? To the patient, more than 50% additional patients can benefit from artificial disc therapy by using the Synergy disc. It can correct their alignment and prevent postoperative neck pain due to poor postoperative alignment with other devices. To the surgeon, we have a very streamlined technique, simple instrumentation system. It can actually be considered, we've heard from surgeons that it can be faster than fusion technologies because you don't have to adhere a plate and screws to the space after you restore the disc height. It's safety and predictability of the technique. From a technology standpoint, the Synergy disc is the only device that can both correct alignment and restore motion to the spine. We have over 55 issued patents for the technology. We've had a great clinical track record, over 1,000 implants to date. No device-related adverse events. We've been steadily growing sales. We doubled our sales in 2019. One thing I didn't mention earlier, but late in 2018, we achieved our reimbursement approval in Australia. And within 1 year of Australia reimbursement approval, we had already become the second largest disc by volume in Australia. So the surgeon adoption has been great, and they're loving the Synergy technology that combines alignment. From a reimbursement standpoint, we have a very efficient pathway to get through this trial. We have a single-arm study design, non-randomized. It's only 175 patients. We've activated our first 2 sites now, and our first patient should enroll this month. And from a market and investor standpoint, it's a high-growth market. It's an attractive space with a number of unmet needs and a number of companies that need solutions in this space. It's the fastest-growing segment of spine, and the Synergy disc, with its unique combination of features and advantages, can actually expand this patient population and expand this market. Thank you so much for the opportunity to present this exciting company today, and we look forward to the opportunity to potentially partner with you to expand the commercialization and get the largest spine market in the world access to this great technology. With that, I would like to open up the floor to any questions. And I'll pull up my Q&A panel here. And Lindsay, if you want to provide the attendees with any instructions on how to send in questions, that would be great.
Yes, again, using your questions chat option on your screen to submit those questions, so we can go ahead and take those now.
While we're waiting for questions to pop in, I will go ahead and address a few questions that we received from prospective investors on the company. One of the questions I've received is around a clinical trial. So, you know, a lot of investors see a clinical trial and they think of device trials, obviously, they think of drug trials. You know, obviously everybody's very aware of COVID-19 and the supposed vaccinations and all the trials involved with that, and it's a long process, it's a long endeavor. But these device trials are actually not like drug trials. It's a well-defined pathway. Approximately 7 to 8 technologies have already been down this pathway in cervical arthroplasty or cervical artificial disc replacement. So the pathway is well known, the outcomes are well known. So investors say, you know, what is the risk of not completing this trial? This seems like a risky endeavor. Well, in fact, actually, the cervical artificial disc segment is the single most studied segment in spine, and actually in orthopedics in general. Most class 1 data exists with long-term follow-up. So we have a great idea of what the long-term follow-up, what the clinical success, what the efficacy and outcomes are in this space. And by using our control data from our strategic shareholder, we know the exact bar we need to get above. All the devices that have been approved to date have been significantly over this bar. So in terms of risk, obviously there's some risk, but I'd say, you know, we're highly confident in our ability to conduct this trial, to get outcomes that are in line with this, with our requirements. You know, we've done 1,000 cases worldwide with the Synergy disc with 0 device-related adverse events. So 175 patients in the US are really not much different than 175 patients in Europe and Asia. Additionally, we are partnered with the nation-leading clinical research organization in this space, Their name is MCRA, MICRA, Musculoskeletal Clinical Regulatory Advisors. And they are going to be leading our clinical research efforts as our CRO, as well as our regulatory efforts. They've been involved in every single artificial disc approval in the United States, know the space well, and know exactly what the FDA, the agency, is looking for. So hopefully that helps address that question. Dr. Dougal, do you have any additional input on risk of completing that trial?
No, I mean, most of the surgeons that have entered, we've managed to get some of the largest centers in the United States signed up for this trial. And all the surgeons that are being involved in this have been involved with other devices and see the unique features of Synergy as actually providing more safety for the patient. So a lot of the features we've seen outside the United States, for example, safety stops, or the ability to be a little bit more forgiving, or a shorter technique. American surgeons have also found that these are significant benefits of the device. So, from a clinical perspective, I really see the risk as being low. We have experienced surgeons that have experience in participating in trials. From a safety perspective of the technology, we have, as Josh mentioned, a very long track record and a large patient experience outside the United States. The regulatory aspect of it has been addressed by the nation's leading regulatory group. So really, we're in the best position to start this trial, complete it quickly, and we anticipate, given the surgeons that have, their previous volumes and their previous experience, we're expecting to have this trial completed by 12 months, which is something quite amazing. So the fact that we don't need to have a fusion arm or a control arm, the importance of that can't be overstated. A lot of the other devices that you might hear of that are considering starting a trial or about to start a trial, they'll have to recruit a control arm and an intervention arm. The problem is when you have a control arm like fusion, patients who get enrolled in the study, if they don't get enrolled into the intervention arm, they drop out. And so it takes a very long time for you to recruit all the patients, particularly the control arm. And of course, you're burning cash during this time. So having the fusion data is quite an exception, and I think is a testament to our strategic partners' confidence in the technology and the excellent regulatory group that we've been working with.
Great, thank you so much, Neil. That was very helpful. Continuing on this theme of clinical trial and U.S. patient access, we have a question from Kip Colson. His question is, at this point, are U.S. patients able to access this type of surgery, or must they wait until the trials are complete? So we are not commercialized in the U.S. We have to engage in this clinical trial in order to get FDA clearance for the technology. However, U.S. patients can benefit from this therapy beginning this month if they are enrollees in the clinical trial. So we anticipate enrolling the clinical trial over the next 12 months, and then we'll follow those patients for 2 years. But in terms of commercialization and patient access, for most of their providers, that will be probably in 2023, 2024 timeframe. So hopefully that answers your question there, Kip. And certainly if you have any friends or family or anybody that you know that has degenerative disc disease, I know I have a number of people that, especially with mobile devices and these work from home Zoom meetings and stuff, poor posture is an ever-growing problem. And so everybody knows somebody with neck or back pain and problems, and we could certainly refer those patients to some of our high-profile clinical institutions as desired. So feel free to reach out if there's interest there. We have another question from Robert Nathan. Robert asks and wants to know about the shareholder makeup for Synergy Disc, and who are the strategic shareholders on our cap table. So I'll describe a little bit, and Neil, maybe I'll pass it to you to describe how we've been receiving tremendous support from our shareholder base. We are a We are a private Canadian corporation. The parent company is an Ontario corporation with a wholly owned subsidiary in the United States, a Delaware company, which is where most of our employees are. So our operational base and everything is out of the United States, where we generate revenues, but the parent company, the roll-up, is an Ontario corporation. Now, we've been in existence ever since 2005, and since 2005 to today, we've raised over $18 million for the company, and we've done that really with no venture capital. We've received tremendous support from high net worth individuals, family offices, primarily in Canada, physicians, people that are educated in this arena of clinical trials and devices and know the differentiating features that take their on. So that's what makes up the majority of our cap table today. The strategic shareholder that we alluded to is one of the top 3 global spine companies. I think I can say it in this forum because there was a press release about it. It's public information, but their name is invasive. They have over $1 billion in revenue. They trade on NASDAQ. Their ticker is NUVA. You can certainly look them up, but they're known as the innovative spinal medical device company. If you go to the trade shows and you see, the top 5 out there, they're the ones with the flashing blue lights, the surgeons gathering around their stand. They're the ones that are really pushing the pace of innovation in spinal orthopedic device. And if you look at a lot of their promotional materials, they've trademarked the phrase alignment matters. So naturally, with the alignment features of the Synergy disc, this naturally resonated with a lot of their device and design philosophy. Neil, can you share any more about the great supportive shareholder base that we have?
Yeah, so we've been very fortunate to be linked to ultra high net worth individuals, family offices, many in the medtech space, previous CEOs of companies that have had exits to Stryker, probably one of the largest generic pharmaceutical companies in the world, their founder, their CEO. So individuals that really understand IP, understand how to build, and the lengthy process of developing a medical device. It's also resonated with surgeons. We have numerous surgeons in Australia that have used the disc, or surgeons that are not participating in the trial, but that are in the United States, rehab physicians, a very large group of individuals that understand the space and the value of alignment. And it's hard to really impress upon someone that really doesn't know the space well how important alignment is. But everything we do in spinal surgery is about reconstructing alignment after we do surgery, and we look at that as our carpentry skills when we look at x-rays. And every fusion device, as Josh mentioned, which is the historical solution, incorporates 6 degrees of alignment. So it was really an obvious thing in some ways to have an artificial disc that could also have that important feature. I should also mention distributors, people that have had firsthand knowledge outside the United States distributing our device, have are also members of the cap table. Josh, do you want me to add anything more? Is that okay?
No, that's perfect. Thanks so much, Neil. But along the lines of differentiation, we have a question here, Neil. It's really around how is it, we're not the first to market. How is the Synergy disc different than other technologies in discs with 1 level approval? And so since you were just talking about that, can you expand on that a little bit?
Oh, right. So part of it's what we've covered, and that is that, initially when they started artificial discs, the pie was quite large, and we used to use it for pretty much all patients, all comers. And then we noticed this issue of alignment, and all of a sudden the pie kind of got halved, if not more. And we started saying, look, you have to have a perfect alignment for us to consider an artificial disc with you. Well, the way Synergy is different than the other implants that are on the market and that have had approval is that we will be the first to really try to re-expand that market. Outside the United States, that's where we see validation of that. In Germany, Australia, England, they're using our devices, our alignment feature to correct, for surgeries to correct alignment where they would normally, previous to seeing our device, would have done a fusion. And we have a large, library of X-rays that validates that the proof's in the pudding, which is in the X-rays in the patients. The other feature that we have is we will be the only device that will have approval to be used in the context of a previous surgery. And this accounts for 12% of patients. And we will be the only company that will have reimbursement accordingly. Josh?
Great, thank you, Neil. That was very helpful. This is on this theme of clinical trials. We also got a question around what about a 2-level trial? So the purpose of our raise today and why we're speaking with you is really to raise the funds to complete this 1-level trial activity. But we do see in our future to really, when we get access to the United States market, to be competitive. There are a couple other devices that have a 2-level indication, which means again that they can use the device in at 2 disc segments in the same operation. So the FDA requires a separate trial for that activity. Now, to be competitive in this market space, this is about 30% of cases. To be competitive when we hit the market, we believe we'll need 2-level indications, and so we'll plan to go down a 2-level indication pathway as well. We plan to do a separate capital financing effort for that, but we really want to focus on this 1-level trial, get our enrollment complete, see early outcomes, and then engage in this 2-level trial so that we can hopefully use these same institutions that we're partnering with on the 1-level trial. Once they complete enrollment, then we proceed with our enrollment in the 2-level trial activity.
And given that we already have the fusion information or the data, it's completely logical for us to start with the 1-level trial because we don't need to have a randomization. We already have one complete data set.
Perfect, thank you very much. I've gone through most of the questions so far from the attendees. If there are any other questions, please submit your questions. We'd be happy to go through them. Alternatively, also myself and Neil are always available. We'll send out a communication with my email address. We'd be happy to follow up on any additional questions or diligence or any other items that you may be interested in talking about with the company. One last question I've got here from the group is, what is the impact on Synergy Disc with COVID-19? And I'd say, we've been fortunate. We've probably never been in a healthier cash position as a company. We've been able to weather the COVID storm very well and anticipate that we'll be able to do that. We certainly have seen a significant revenue impact ever starting in March. We were on a great track record to achieve our sales growth plan for 2020. And all of a sudden, with the temporary halt on non-emergency surgical procedures or quote unquote elective procedures, this type of spine surgery is generally it's to deal with debilitating arm and neck pain, but it is considered a spinal surgery or an elective case. I think if you talk to those patients, none of them will say this is really an elective case, that they're in just debilitating, pain that affects their daily life and daily work activities. But nonetheless, as around the world, they prioritize these ORs for these COVID patients and trying to preserve the PP&E for these COVID patients. A lot of these procedures have been temporarily halted around the world. Now, we've seen these procedures already start to come back in certain geographies. In Germany, for example, procedures are not back to 100%. I would say they're probably back to 70% or so. So we've seen procedures tick back up, and we've picked up just where we were on that growth curve. Australia has done a phenomenal job at managing COVID and their hospital capacity, and they are running at about probably 80% capacity as well. We've seen a good resumption of surgical procedures. In the UK, for example, I know, and in Switzerland, they've just gone back into a secondary lockdown with the secondary wave. So again, we're seeing, yes.
I was going to just mention that, for our trial, we'll be doing our trial in these primarily in these ambulatory surgical centers, which seem to be somewhat less impacted Certainly patients don't want to go to large hospitals and potentially be exposed to COVID. But in these small ambulatory centers where the staff is smaller, there are no inpatients. We're hearing from our investigators that they're not really terribly concerned that COVID could create a pause or any type of issue for the trial. And we have also had lengthy discussions with our regulatory group and have a contingency plan if there is a significant wave of cases. We're prepared for it.
Great, thank you, Neil. That's very helpful. Very helpful. I think that's just about all of the questions we've received. So again, thank you sincerely for your time. Your time is very valuable. Thank you for hearing about our technology and our story. And we'd love to work on expanding the commercialization of the Synergy Disc in this exciting marketplace. So we look forward to following up with you. Thanks again for your time. Thanks, Dr. Dougal, for your time and joining us today. And we'll be in touch.
Thank you,
Josh,
everybody.
Dr. Dougal, thank you so much. We hope you guys have a fantastic day. And as I mentioned, we will be following up with you. Have a good one.
You as well. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye now.